Let's see my slideshow. Okay, so we are going to start with our next panel, which is this is my team that I brought to the table to talk about community-based participatory research. Myself, I'm an education doc. I'm community faculty at Charles University of Medicine and Science. I bought Ted Booker, which is my big brother. I was born on his birthday, meaning I was his birthday present. He comes from a Mod Institute, and his work in community has been with the incarcerated population. And he now works at a Mod Institute. He'll tell you more about the population in which he serves now. And we have Miss Angela Young-Brent, who is community faculty there along with me at CDU. And we have Miss Connie Kizzy Gillette. She is our policy person that I have brought to the table to talk about this process in policy. She's the founder of Lily's Care Circle. And here you see we have our bus. We got a little more elaborate with our bus here. And we have our community round table. It's depicted there in the picture you see on our bus. So this is our community academic partnership bus, which I have Dr. Tanya Robeson in the driver's seat. She is from Governor State University. That is one of my partners in crime from Chicago. I respect the work that she does. She's a community psychologist there. And Tanya Robeson, she's a bad girl over there in Chicago on the South Side doing the work there. So this is my team that I wanted to bring to the table to talk this morning. So I'm going to stop this one because I'm going to bring aboard my presentation. I will start first with the conversation. Excuse me a moment. It seems like my presentation isn't showing right now. Back to my screen. So are you guys still able to see me and my screen? I think I have to go through.
No, just you, not your screen.
Okay.
No, you gotta share your screen.
Okay, hold on. Share screens. I just share screen. Okay, there we go. There we go. Slideshow mode. Like I had to move my computer around. Okay, for me, this perspective that I'm coming from, being someone that is born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, and when I think about the process, you know, and my background and having grandparents, you know, living on plantations, you know, so my title, Walking African American Community Grassroots Service Providers into the Research Worldview, you know, it was even coming into this process, you know, in order for change and dialogue, the change of language, power dynamics, changing the face of leadership and players sitting at the table. I utilized the picture of this young lady historically, which is the figure that you saw, this picture. Over the years, you saw the FBI walking this young lady into school, the school building, at a time when Blacks were not allowed to go into school with their white peers, you know, segregation. And Ruby Bridges, for me, she represents change. And she's only a couple of years older than I am. So if Ruby had not walked through those doors that day, I would not have been the walk that were that didn't have Black America a part of the process. So for me, it's like, how do we guide Black Americans whose ancestry is linked to the Jim Crow tragedy, from the community service to academic wealth? Is when I think about things, it's like, and I've been a part of this process, and I'm looking at the last 5 decades. My thing is, I've witnessed African American community grants service providers have only advanced wealth and knowledge, small wealth, sitting at the table of research, to some manuscript credit, some prevention and intervention changes for the better, some income for short periods of time, some job advancement, some knowledge of funding streams, some knowledge of research process, and their time not being valued with modest wages, and that bothers me, and you see the journey in the road, when you look at community and academia, when it comes to this process and the worldview of academic research, we're still behind. We're still behind traveling in this process. And still things need to be done. So in this part, I wanted to, I was sitting down and I was thinking, and I thought about my self-report. What does that look like? So I'm an African-American female from New Orleans, Louisiana. My grandparents lived on plantation. I'm a few years younger than Ruby Bridges. I raised 3 children, and I'm a first generation to obtain a doctoral degree. I spent over 25 years teaching and volunteering in K-12 systems to help children and families move their lives. Then my brother brought me to meet Dr. Loretta Jones 17 years ago. She walked me to the table of research. Dr. Jones sponsored me to be hired at CDU 4 years ago because she was like, you know what, you've been doing this process. You might as well become official, become community faculty. So 4 years ago, I became community faculty. And over the past 17 years, I have applied for 2 grants as the PI. I have published on 17 manuscripts. I have been a senior author on 2 manuscripts. I have been a part of the interview team on grants. I've been a part of the team analysis. I've sat on advisory boards on projects. I have gained scientific team awards. I've mentored community and academics. I've sat on the data safety monitoring boards of research. I have been a co-investigator on research. I've added to the body of knowledge in emergency medicine, public health, and sit on academic boards, but have not acquired academic salary needed at this level. That is not something I've obtained. So when I sat down for self-reflection, I recognize and see the value in research. I have recognized disparities in African-American communities exist because we are not connected to the research and the research dollars. I have recognized that even when we are at the table of research, if we don't obtain mentorship from the academic leaders, there still remains gaps and barriers to adding financial wealth. Asking the question, how do we obtain community scholars and community internship programs in order to advance research training in African-American communities? But we need to develop academic rigor through a community lens. This is a great need to obtain rigor in community learning environments that will challenge community leaders and members thinking in new and interesting ways. Strategies are being developed to have community leaders enter into healthy African-American families to community learning environments. He or she will encourage towards a sophisticated understanding of fundamental ideas, driven by curiosity to discover what they do not know. Community academic collaborations and community environments can become the change needed to grow community scientists. There are still barriers within the academic institutions that stifle the growth of community leaders, no matter how hard the stakeholders work to open the door. for change and inclusion. So this was when Dr. Wells talked about one of the team awards. This was when we had obtained the Landmark Award, the UCLA Landmark Award. We were the ones who got the award. And this is our team. This is the council that have worked together. And, you know, the people in this picture are near and dear to my heart. We have traveled this journey and we've been on and off the bus. We've stayed the course and we're still moving. In order for this process to work, you got to be invested and you got to stay in. Because if you don't, it will fall apart and the work won't get done. So when you decide to engage in community participatory research, community-based research, how invested are you? Thank you for your time. And we'll talk. We're going to go on to our next presenter, which is Ted Booker. I'm going to bring up Ted's slides. Stop sharing that. Go into sharing my screen. For Ted's slide. Hold on. I think I need to grab Ted's slide.
Already open, or you should be.
I don't know what's happening. Let me pull it up first. Let me go to Ted's. Okay. That's and there's Ted. Okay, Ted.
Thank you.
Flash your mom.
Full screen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ted Booker. I am manager of housing services with SART Institute. SART stands for Arming Minorities Against Addiction and Disease. And the project that I've worked with is called Reclaiming Innocence Project. And the Restoring Pride, Self-Esteem, and self-sufficiency is the work that we do. That's the outcome that we try to achieve for the program. One of the things, next slide. One of the things that I really like about SART is that we pride ourselves on whole person care, and with an emphasis on mental wellness. We have a small staff of about 25. We have 5 therapists on staff. We have therapists that sit on all of our teams for all of our programs. And it's really important when you think about the African-American experience. And one of the things that I like, we are an agency that deal with everyone, but we specialize in services to the LGBTQ community because of the disparities that exist within their within the community. One of the things I also appreciate about SART is that we mostly serve Black Americans because based on how programs have been funded, there's been this question I've been asking, there's such a disproportionate disparity across the board in terms of problem areas for Black folks. At what point are we able to apply principles of equity? And so based on our funding streams, we've gotten permission through our funders to really apply principles of equity and specifically do services, seek out African Americans, Black folks in the areas. We deal with everybody, but they're the main population that we do our services to. So with an approach is everything. Mental wellness is everything. But from historically, African Americans, Black people have not had the opportunity, based on all the trauma that many of us have been exposed to. There's never been an outlet to really be able to download all the issues that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in terms of systemic racism and many other things that happen to us. We're expected to suck it up and move forward, but it is not possible to have clear and focused concentration when you have a bunch of unresolved issues on that exist on your mind. And so there's a need to really be able to come up with a model that will allow us to be trauma informed, that will allow us to be client centered, that will allow us to be culturally empathetic. And so all of our approaches encompass that in terms of our program approach. And so, and for our team, one of the things that with our team, we have a behavioral health counselor, we have peer navigators, we have a housing navigator, but we also lend from, we're able to work across programs. We have a substance abuse specialist that work with us with the population that we deal with. And through this process, one of the things that we like to do in terms of, we have 4 empowerment principles, and the self-empowerment strategy includes identifying need, identifying interests, identifying commitment and expectation, and the framework for an anticipated outcome where we'll end up in having a shift in attitude and beliefs, and you can see that. There'll be increase in knowledge, and then you're able to address the barriers. On our teams, we have the behavioral health therapist is the lead. That behavioral health therapist does a biopsychosocial assessment. And the thing that makes us different from everybody else, most programs have a case manager, and a case manager is overwhelmed with 80 plus participants. You can't really attend to a person's need when you have a client, a client roster so large. Once a therapist does a biopsychosocial assessment, the team splits up all the barriers, and everybody work with something different, a different barrier for that one individual. And we case conference every week. So our model is considered an intensive case management approach. I know that it's worked well because I've been doing this work for 25 plus years, and I don't know any other program that function in the way that we function. And one of the things that we are I consider us a cutting edge organization. We are prime entity to really engage the research and science community, because I'm very interested in us being able to contribute to best practices. And so we have to learn about the process of how you do that, how to write peer review articles, how to do op-eds, how to do white papers, to really talk about, we're really big on data collection. Data collection has prompted us to really be able to really expand, because we've only been around for about 5 years, and we have multiple programs, and we're growing so fast. Our leader considers himself an executive social worker. He's a social worker at heart, and he's working on his DSW, which allows, his dissertation is around establishing a national organization. And so I think researchers, I think we will be a great connector in community and in our population to actually add to the science base, and to increase knowledge, and have communities to be more receptive about participating in research. And so if CPPR is an approach to research, we particularly like CPPR, but I included CDPR because what we have been talking about. But if it's an approach to research that involves collective, reflective, and systematic inquiry, in which research and community stakeholders engage as an equal partner in all steps of the research process, with the goal of educating, improving practice of bringing about social change, then there's something we should, for our population. One of the things that I like about that's dear to me is how Dr. Jones introduced, she has a term that she called grassroots experts. I have like a 25 plus year relationship with her. I met her on the community level when I was a director of my very first residential program. And I learned so much from this process, and so much from HAF, and so much from her, that it shapes how I work today. And so, but if we're going to consider this, Amada's Institute, as I mentioned earlier, we pride ourselves on whole person care with an emphasis on mental wellness from a cultural perspective. The relevance of this approach is what needs to be widespread. So when you're looking at research and how research influences social service system, in social services, every funding stream is a result of some kind of research that have been done. So if you look at an agency like ours and an approach and the successes that we have over the data collection, it will inform policy. It will inform larger entities in how they work and how they provide services to this particular population. There's a disconnect with how services are right now. There's a disconnect in terms of how services are being rendered to justice involved individuals. There's little or no communication between like housing providers and service providers. This should be together. There's also a disconnect between, you know, when you're working with the person to bring about self-sufficiency, housing and employment should go together. And there's a disconnect there. Everything functions separately instead of in collaboration with each other. There should be round tables. There's a program, a project with the Department of Children Family Services years ago. It was called Family Preservation. Family Preservation was a model in which when you look at working with a family for reunification, there were regular case conferences for all the providers that was working with that family, everybody in the room at one time with the participants or client that you're working with. And so all the things you have, the client couldn't tell me one thing and another provider something else, that we all in the same room. If you really want to bring about success, you have to use, I'm for having, especially a population like this, an intensive case management model. There's a way that the work can be done without being overwhelmed. We need the science community. I would like an agency like ours to go through the rigors of science to show that it really works, and have the research community to work with us to really show and prove that it works, and to help develop those strategies too for others to catch the vision and do the work the same way.
Okay, thank you very much, Ted. Next we have Angela Young-Brent, who is community faculty at Charles Drew University. She's a doctor in psychology, specialized in mental health policies and practice. You're up, Ms. Angela Young-Brent.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Juanita, for that introduction. And real quickly, today, community-based research, CBPR, process in community. Is community-based participatory research important to community services? Has community gained sustainable improvements in service through CBPR? I give a couple of definitions there. Definition for research: a systematic investigation, including development, testing, or evaluation designed to develop, contribute, or generalize about knowledge. Evaluation: a systematic and objective assessment of an ongoing or completed project, program, or policy to design implementation and results. The next slide, I kind of give I talk about CBPR research process, and I try to do a little diagram. First, you start by engaging the stakeholders and form a CBPR partnership. Then you assessing the community and the community's strengths and dynamics, identifying the priority. Everybody can see that, right?
Yeah.
With PowerPoints, I always feel like you're belittling somebody when you're reading stuff that they can see and read themselves. But you can see how it all works. In the middle there, you see the circle that says sustaining and evaluating CBPR partnership. But I feel that you need all these pieces in a CBPR research process. My next slide is talking about community-based participatory research from a community perception. Is community-based participatory research important in community? And we all can agree and know that it is. It's very important. CBPR with public health focus on social, structural, and physical environmental equality may influence social, political, economic, cultural, ethics, and gender factors over time. The researchers and the participants are interactively linked. Findings are facilitated and disseminated. This is what we're supposed to be doing to make it important to the community. Participatory community research can increase attention to the complex issues that comprise the health of people living in under-resourced communities. Because such research requires grassroots work in the community, it enables the researcher to fully understand the unique local realities that may either obstruct or help a public health intervention. And on the other side, I have listed there adding skills and creating sustainable income. And as when Juanita was talking, like how she was saying all the things that she's doing, but how she's not financially being, really getting paid for that. Matter of fact, I'm getting ready to rush out the door to do something else to try to add to my income, because you're not getting paid. The financial part is not there. But I went on to say that academic researchers can help grassroots service providers understand the grant writing process in order to go after funding, become an academic mentor in community organization, start implementing more policy tracks that improve public health interventions, make sure community gain true knowledge and understanding of CBPR. We didn't have a lot of time for to really talk about that, because I really wanted to start talking about who and what are we considering or calling community? Because I feel that there's a lot of there's communities within community. And so I think understanding that and understanding really who we're working with, and again, alluding to what Dr. Booker-Vaughns stated, that her heart and everything is in community, but she's also part of academic. And a lot of us are in that category. But I think sometimes when we have the title community, we're not financially, we're not compensated for that. And in a sense, we should be compensated maybe even a little bit more, because we have the community part, the experience, and we went to school also. So, and then the last thing I said there, committing to conducting research that will benefit the participant either through direct intervention or by using the results to inform action for change. And let's see, the next slide, did I talk? Don't forget why you came to community, to be accountable to the community we serve, to gain new knowledge and insight about our work that result in improvements to our work, to build a capacity of organization and people, to be a good steward of the research sources entrusted to us, and to influence policymakers and funders, to share what we are learning with other communities. And one of the questions that I asked earlier is the stuff sustainable? Is what we're doing, is it sustainable? And in my heart, and being honest this morning, I don't feel that it is. I feel that the community part, and when we're put in on a grant, I'm just going to be honest, you guys. This is what I feel. I feel like we're helping individuals in the academic arena. We're helping them with their career. But so far as leaving something for sustainable for the community, I don't think we've arrived yet. Because after that particular project is over, then that's it. But then the academic person can put in their papers and stuff saying what they've done and da 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 da. But the community, I don't see anything from them to say this is the result. So even though in a lot of, I'm the past deputy director also for Dr. Loretta Jones, and I was with her for, I guess, it's 17 years. I started with her like in 2003, 2004. And I don't see, I feel like, it's like when we're raising our children, we train them and we raise them in how we want them to show up. And then, but after a while, we have to take our hand off of them and let them grow for themselves. And I think even though when academics come in and help community do something, but teach them what they need to know so they can stand on their own feet and then do these own things and not say, well, UCLA or Drew did this, but we did it, the community did it. And I don't see that part. And I think that's my time. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Angela. We're going to have Dr. Robeson next, and she's going to share her screen. So is there a way for her to share her screen, Christina?
Yeah, everybody has access to share their screen. So Dr.
Okay,
Robertson,
Dr. Robeson.
you can just click
You're
on
up.
share screen on the green button. Yeah, the green button at the bottom.
You're up.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya Roberson, and I'm a community psychologist in Chicago, Illinois at Governor State University in the College of Health and Human Services. I like to start with a quote, and it is, if we take the time to care about people, we can transform whole communities. You never know how you can change someone's life by showing him or her that you care. As a community psychologist, my role is to meet people where they are to help them cope. And I feel very fortunate that I have had the opportunity to work as a community member, working with different researchers in academia and doing research studies. And I've actually experienced implicit biases, unethical research, a lot of mistrust back to 1997 when my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And actually, that's what encouraged me to go back and to continue in public health and in research, because I thought then to myself, if we went through what we went through and we had the education and the wherewithal to go to doctors and ask questions and things of that nature, what about the individuals that don't have the voice to speak up for themselves? And now that I'm a research scientist and working in academia, I see that although some strides have been made, there's still a lot of gaps, and it's needs that need to be filled on both sides for the community members and for researchers. I know we talk a lot about CBR and having joint relationships and being fair and being ethical, but sometimes, although this is a rewarding field, I don't think that this is a job or position for everyone. And in this slide here, I have 9 natural skills that show that you're a natural fit, because I really feel that you have to have certain humanistic qualities to even be in this field, to work in research or with people or in the community. You definitely can't be the type of person that say, I don't like to talk to people, and say you want to work in community engagement or in true community-based participatory research, because I hear a lot of people saying that they're working and doing community-based participatory research, and in all actuality, they aren't. Because true community-based participatory research, it's a dating process, really. And if you're lucky, you would have achieved that in maybe about 2 years. It's not like doing drive-bys, taking a few pizzas over to a church, and then they don't even hear from you anymore when you don't disseminate any of your findings or anything like that. So to pay more attention to your partners, you really have to engage them. And community engagement is a planning and a decision-making process where the academia, they need to include the community at the inception, not trying to fit a circle into a square after you received a grant for a dementia program. Then you want to bring it to a community and no one there even has dementia. The individual in the community is what's most important. I try to do a lot of needs assessments. I just don't go by the trends, because one size does not fit all. And so there's a difference with the African Americans on the south side of Chicago versus in the south suburbs where I work now. So I can't assume that the same issues or problems that they're having are the same ones that they're having in the Southland. So I make it highly individualized and culturally tailor it for that individual. And just because it's a project that might work in the Asian community, you can't put a kente cloth on it and say it's going to work in the African American community, or translate it into Spanish and say that it's going to work in the Latino community. And to also remember, participatory research action approach is very vital. This is research being done with people and not our own people. And it's always using the bottom up organizing, because I've noticed that when you do that, it's really sustainable, because it's actually what the community needs or wants. And then you're able to even have develop peer-to-peer education in the community. So once the grant money is gone or the grant funding is gone and the project is over, you can have something to leave in the community and have like champions that you educate so that they can continue to work with whoever comes to their community next. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. I'm not sure if Connie Kizzy-Gillette is here with us. She was to share her policy piece. Is Connie here? I'm not sure. So I know she was starting with the, she had a doctor's appointment. Let me see Connie's slide. I don't know what happens when I go to share my, okay, share. Okay, here it is. Okay, so I had asked Connie Kizzy-Gillette to come aboard the conversation of community-based research, civic engagements, and public policies and law, a community agenda. Because Connie, she was community faculty at CDU, but she moved to Chicago. But Connie was trained by some of the best there in LA. Maxine Waters, Diane Watson, and different others. But this process, I think, many times when we are engaging in community-based research, community participatory research, many times there should be a policy agenda that becomes part of that process. So in Connie's slide, since she's not here, she said just in case she couldn't make it, she wanted me to have the conversation. Connie's message was connecting community-based research to public policy making process. You know, so in here she has like, I guess, a diagram, a model, you know, where once the when you're in the intervention, I know she and I have had that conversation of thinking about those issues that you're dealing with, identifying the problems and how they link to policy. So is having that the problem identified through the public policy process, and having like a policy formulation, and having that training and understanding and talk and conversation with community to make sure that they understand this process, you know, and going through the process and developing the policy. So for the policy that is being adopted, implemented, evaluated, is the process that needs to take place for implementing policy. So in here, you know, she's defining, you know, civic engagement and public policy and law, which her slides are saying that civic engagement or civic participation is any individual or group activity addressing issues of public concern. Civic engagement includes communities working together or individuals working alone in both political and non-political actions to protect public values and make a change in community. And many times, I've learned even in the classroom setting and dealing with the parents, many times I talk to members in community and they want change to happen and things to happen and want to know and don't really understand why changes are not happening. And they know that there are problems or issues, but they don't understand that a lot of this happens through public policy. If change is going to happen, you have to learn to look at the issues and create public policy. So in the public policy and the law, and in the society, governmental entities enact laws, make policies, and allocate resources. So yeah, resources are very important. So this is true at all levels. Public policy can be generally defined as a system of regulatory measures, course of action, and funding priorities concerning a given topic, promulgated by a governmental entity or representative. Individuals and groups often attempt to shape public policy through education, advocacy, mobilization, or interest groups. Shaping public policy is obviously different in Western style democracies than other forms of government, but it is reasonable to assume that the process always involves efforts by competing interest groups to influence policymakers in their favor. Because I know that, when you talk about this process, when the public policy that came on the ballot for the dialysis clinics, when they came to CDU about that was not the issue that was being addressed based on the policy. So by the time the policy got into action and it was time to vote, we didn't even know how to vote because that public policy had changed in the development. And so we're like, oh my God, wait a minute, hold on. And it wasn't until, community understand, Dr. Keith Norris came on a commercial and said no, because we was like, wait, that wasn't what the issue was. So even understanding this part, sometimes that process will change on you, even if you are the ones that are allocating and implementing the process. And then by the time it get into, up for the implementation, that the process may change on you, the whole process. So misunderstanding this, but I think it's important for this to be a part of community-based participatory research, because there are a lot of issues that need public policies to evoke change. In here, Connie has the public policy usefulness in public health. So having an agenda setting and processes through which a policy and problem is intended to address or acknowledge a public interest. So I see there's a policy formulation which examines the various policy options and considers possible solutions, use a use of advocacy strategies, determine the direction of the policies will take, because that was the thing. We thought we had determined the process in which the policy was going to go in, but it didn't take that direction. So adoption of decision-making made at the governmental level, resulting in decisions that favor one or more approaches to addressing a given problem. And implementation at this stage, the policies implementation parameters are established, which can directly affect the eventual outcomes of the policies. And so she said, during the evaluation stage, this is a stage during which a policy is evaluated to verify whether the implementation and its effects are aligned with the objectives, meaning, yes, having the objectives that were set by the community and academics, that is explicitly or implicitly set out, stays the same. The evaluation is carried out by the government, consultants of civil society, And they say, how can these models guide public health? Because I think that this is all part of public health, public policy, understanding this process. The models can help to situate the context and the channels of influence. So at this stages, the model separates out the different activities associated with the public policy. So both sides understand it. Community and academic understanding this process is very important. So for public health actors who wish to take part in the production of public policies, this model provides a framework for reflecting on the processes surrounding development of a public policy with the help of the benchmarks identified in the stages model. Public health actors can reflect on relevant questions and identify players involved with public problems at different stages, as well as opportunities for interventions, which constitute so many entity points in the policy development process. So for me, I thought that policy should be a part of this conversation. I'm sorry that Connie couldn't join us. And I hope that we have said something that has helped you and helped you gain more perspective from the community side.
Thank you, Dr. Booker-Vaughns. So next we have a discussion scheduled about all the panelists and just everything that we've kind of been discussing up to date. And yeah, just to kind of spare off that discussion, Dr. Booker-Vaughns, I was really disturbed, I guess, by your initial presentation, you know, and you mentioning all your accomplishments and saying, yet I still have not accomplished the salary. And I'm kind of curious, what do you think is the reason behind it not getting there yet? And how do you think we can kind of move forward to demonstrate the value of community-based research faculty?
Because I think that when we come aboard as community faculty, it kind of stifles and put us in a box where, because even for me, going after the postdoc fellowships, the very position that I came aboard to have an impact and be a voice also was a barrier for me, because I couldn't get into even the postdoc fellowships, because this only left me in a part-time position. And although I had all of the qualifications needed, it was not being full-time that kept me from obtaining a postdoc fellowship, which time went by. And so I've been out of school since 2014. So now that time for me has gone by. I mean, I stay involved in the process of implementing and improving and mentoring and public speaking and the research. And most of the time, I think because I thought it was so important to be the voice on advisory committees and data safety monitoring boards and things to make sure that there was no harm, you know, coming to the participants in this process, to where I didn't move toward the PI track until later. But I have not been, I guess because we're community faculty, we don't get wind of open positions or things that are happening, or even, I guess, our increase in our salaries or any of that doesn't come with this.
Juanita, this is Angela. May I just say that when they brought us on as community faculty, they brought us all in as part-time, even though we're doing full-time work, but we're classified as part-time. And so that's one of the, like you were saying, why you didn't get in your post program, is because they classified community faculty all as a part-time, but we're doing full-time work.
Need to add to the conversation. I'm Dr. Vaughns. My background is employment and and housing and career coaching is a big piece of what I've done because of my background. That's a systemic problem it's part of a systemic problem that we're having, because I work in social services, and when you get to where decisions are made, I've sat at many tables where we're talking about minority populations, and nobody around the table looks, the conversation we're having, there's nobody from those populations that represent. There's a larger issue in terms of some systemic racism and structural issues that we have that has to do with sharing power. And when you look at the dynamics of how social services work and how when you're in a position of power, because my background is also in business, that it's a clear indication, because you can't go, when you look at Black culture, one thing you have to understand about Black culture is our women are the foundation of our culture based on the relationship with this country. And if you don't, in major places, if you don't see a Black woman at your table, then something is really wrong. Because if you're trying to make an inroad, you're being transparent and trying to get to the Black community, you need to see a Black woman, because in Black culture, she holds the culture accountable. She's the foundation for the culture, and it doesn't take anything away from men. And it's not to say that men are not there, but by and large, the way the culture works and just the relationship with the country, she has to be a part. You can't do anything in Black culture without having a Black woman present and be a piece of what's going on. That's just the nature of how things work for the culture. But it's a power sharing thing that is really happening, because really transparent, and you will then, and the thing that I've learned also is it takes a person in power to have the ability to make a decision to include. Because I've had position when I had a position in construction where I placed skilled trade working on project, because I was in a position of power. I was able to shift the dynamics of how things happen and create more inclusion for minorities working, because I was a decision maker. So you need a person that's a decision maker that has that level of integrity and transparency to shift the paradigm, and that's the only way it's going to happen. Be very clear about that.
Christina, this is Plus. Based on what they've all said, and like, oh gosh,
Juanita?
not Juanita, Angela said we were brought in as part-time, even though we're doing full-time. But the thing was, Charles Drew didn't accept it. Okay, let's just be honest. Loretta had to fight for us to get in there. And so we had to go outside of the university to get on grants or whatever, but we still weren't at the head or making the money that the others were making. And the universities, the whomever, don't see us as a higher power or equal with them. They see us lower than them. So they put us on advisory boards. So they say we're consultants and, you pay us minimum, whatever. So we're fighting through that. But Aziza is over us. Dr. Martins and Aziza are over the community faculty. And so Aziza is putting us back in on the table, not in the table, but in the play. And so we've been sitting at all these tables. We even did presentations to have the faculty at Charles Drew come and meet us, and no one came but the students. Now, I won't say no one, but there was very few people that came. And so when we told them about our projects, we had to write a curriculum, we had to write a syllabus, we had to do all of that. And they accepted our curriculum. But I'm saying that to say, they don't see us as Loretta wanted to call us PhD of the sidewalk. We said, no, they're not going to take us serious. Well, little did we know they weren't going to take us serious as community faculty either. So like Ted said, they don't see us as equal power. Everyone has all those high degrees and whatever. They went and got the degrees. They still don't see us there. And so that's why we're not getting that compensation. And that's just the bare roots of it. I'm not putting anybody down. When Dr. Bazargan wrote us into the grant as mentors, at least that put us on some kind of tidbit, whatever, from Charles Drew. But that's just a tidbit.
What needs to happen is, for those, we've been working long enough with this process that those of us that got an interest went and got the education. When the
Right.
education happens, there needs to be a shift to move them from the community side to the academic side, or to
Right.
include them on both the academic and the community side. That's the
Right.
shift that hasn't happened like it needs to. The recognition is not there like it should be. And
Right.
that's the issue. That can only happen through a decision from senior management.
Absolutely.
That's the only way that can happen.
Right, and you're right. You're absolutely right, Ted. And it's because so many of us, we went to the same school as everybody else went to, and so pay them the same way they're getting paid. Pay them where that person is at. If that person don't have a degree, then pay them accordingly with their experience. And then pay the ones that did go back to school, because we're having to pay back these schools. Pay us accordingly. But like when I said, when I was speaking about who are you calling community? You know, who are you really helping? Because if you're looking at community, when you say community faculty, you're looking at a group of individuals who are uneducated, maybe grew up in a project or whatever. That's not the case with many of us that are a part of community faculty. When Loretta started this, it was for community leaders.
Right.
To have a part, and then different people like I was with Loretta for 17 years, and when we would have when we came up with that name, because we were having so many conferences at half. Right. And so we said, well, let's do this. We're witnessing, wellness. So let's call it that. And so that's how we came up with that name. And then when individual like Plus, who was a person in the community, would come into different focus group, and then she stuck around. Plus stuck around, and so that's why she's where she is. But a lot of people, they came and they got the little stipend that we were to give community, and that was it.
Right.
With this process, Angela, I have to say, like, I've had a 25+ year relationship with Half and Loretta. I was the original one that started with community faculty. Right. I left the table because from a practical standpoint, being able to take care of myself, I didn't see enough investment for me to stick with the process. I still participate, but I made a decision not to do the things you guys are doing, because I need to be able to support myself. And I need a different way too. So I had to leave the process. I brought it most able, still get involved, but I left the process because I didn't see enough investment for me. And, I wasn't seeing it.
A lot of people
so that's why I had to leave the table.
Yeah, a lot of people got the title and left.
They didn't.
Yeah.
No, a lot of people before they even got the title, Plus, they left because the monetary part was not there. We have to eat and sleep, have to have a place to live too, and we're just not getting it. Even when Plus alluded to us being on advisory and little bit, we don't get anything. I mean, we might get 5%, but what is that? I was with the conception of community faculty, and we've never gotten a raise from the time that we started. Nothing. And so
we're not even acknowledged.
Even though like Juanita said, we went on and got even more degrees than what we had originally had. It's still not recognized. You're still not looked at the same level. You still look at beneath. You're under.
Right.
You're not.
Angela,
Dr. Barzard is trying to speak.
I will be more than happy to organize another meeting that we discuss those challenges that community faculty have with the right individuals, including the leadership of university. Knowing that we have some students here who are listening to you, would you kindly, all of you, be kind enough to stay in our course and let's finish our presentation. I promise you that I will talk to Dr. Vatgama, to Provost and other, that we can organize a separate meeting that you can bring up all your challenges.
Those concerns.
That's
okay,
wonderful.
I apologize and I thank you.
No problem at all. No problem at all. But that is my promise to you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christina, please.
Christina, I don't know if you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That's so strange. My computer is automatically muting itself and automatically muting me, and I have to keep pushing the buttons to unmute myself. Anyway, yeah, so Dr. Bazargan actually started that discussion. We have a discussion until 10:45. So we have another 15 minutes of discussion on any of the topics that have been presented on so far. And
well, it's being engaged in community-based research. You know, for me, I stay involved because it's important. And I have a husband that has supported me financially. So me coming to the table and also being a part of this process has allowed me to check those boxes that I need to check at an academic level of those things if I was to go apply for another position. There are things that I have to have acquired as far as experience goes. And so I can say through CDU and other universities, I have acquired those experiences. And I thought that was important for me to gain those.
I'd like to shift your conversation a little bit too, bring it back to, this is a substance abuse grant, and my agency, it's called, the acronym stands for Arming Minorities Against Addiction and Disease. And I am in social services. I'm really big on, I understand, because of my relationship with the research community, I understand the importance of research and the importance of educating professionals coming into the industry, coming into the industry, and how to deal with community. And one of the things, the reason why I agreed to participate, because the organization that I work for is a flagship kind of an organization that need to be looked at in terms of the way services are rendered. And so my very first program model was an excellent program, and I know that it worked, but you can't prove that if you don't go through the rigors of science. So on a community level, it's important to connect with organizations like mine, because we have our professional staff to really help us forge a path and increase the knowledge, educate professionals on how to approach community and to do the work that they do. Substance abuse is a really big issue, but the thing that I think that needs to happen is too much emphasis actually putting on the substance abuse itself. Substance abuse is only a byproduct of what's really going on. There's a bunch of underlying issues that are going on that if you fix those underlying issues, the substance abuse will go away. It's like I have a friend that was a doctor, and what's that bone and like an ankle that you feel if you break your ankle, that's one bone. If you fix that one bone, all the other bones will pop into place. Well, I can't think of the term that he used for that on your wrist, I think. But if you deal with those underlying issues and primarily, which is everything starts with your thinking. With the mental wellness, then you're able to, then you have better outcomes when it comes to like in terms of communication, and get a person to adhere to recommendations from your medical professionals. You have better engagement, you have better cooperation when you consider whole person. We're trying to find out how to provide whole person care. And with an emphasis on mental wellness. When you're able to achieve that with participants, then you have more success. And we're all, one of the things I like about this process, what Bond would have is with all your partners, you have to create a win-win situation. How do we create a win-win situation? When you're working on that, you're looking at to see like everybody brings, when you forming those kind of relationships, everybody, you're able to declare on both ends. Everybody's coming to the table, you have to bring something, but you get to declare what you want to bring, but you also get to declare what you want to walk away with. That's important for this whole process. We're looking across the board in terms of how we're trying to heal community. So it's important that we have good communication in those processes that allow us to get pertinent information to each other in the best interest of the participant that we're working with. And with this new generation, I think that is really important to be able to create those processes that allow allow them to talk to each other, find a way to be able to communicate. Because in social services now, with certain disciplines, you're able to sign these agreements where you're able to share information with each other if you're working with a client in the best interest of the client to be able to have the outcomes that you want to be able to achieve. You have to be able to, it does not work if we do not have a win-win situation for everybody. So the question is, how do you create those win-win situations for everybody? Just the same discussion we're having right now. How do you create those win-win situations for everybody? We're looking at community-based participatory research. We're looking at community partner participatory research. But everybody coming to the table and having equity and sharing power and all these things. How do you create that? And I think the primary thing that you need is transparency and open dialogue and this level of fairness to be able to do that. Because when you got young professionals that's looking at a discussion like we're having now, that can sometimes sway. It can help, but it can also hurt if they see if they don't see that level of transparency that you need for things to be able to move forward. We need them. We need to be able to equip them with they need to be effective at their jobs. And for a university like Charles Drew, it is important that there's a healthy relationship with community and all its partners to be able to have the right kind of training and mentoring for those young professionals that's going to be coming out into community. That's critical to their development. We need them to be in a good headspace. We need them to be passionate about the work that they do. We need them to have accurate information. They need to be client-centered. They need to be culturally empathetic. They need to, all of those are all principles across. There's certain of those categories that should be across all disciplines. To be client-centered, that should be across all disciplines. We all have different mandates that we have to adhere to do our work. But how do we have discussion? Should be centered around some basic principles that we all adhering to achieve the outcome. But we all can agree on the same outcome. We can work amongst ourselves in terms of how we achieve that outcome, but we have to at least agree on the same outcome that we want to be able to achieve. That should kind of put us back on course in terms of how. And so we look at your different disciplines for the students that you have and the work that they do. How do we give them the information that they need to be, for that level of excellence, to be culturally relevant and to really be effective at the work that they do in their given professions.
Yes, and you know what, Ted, to add to what you're saying, because that's why when I looked at the training process for treatment centers and for those that are going to go into this field, I saw, and especially when as it relates to community participatory research or community-based research, I saw that there was a need for us in this process to have like a community roundtable discussion, because I think that this is a different conversation from what they're going to be doing in treatment centers, in public health centers, or however else, because it's sitting down with the process that we've always done, having those conversations in community, because it's those issues and topics and things that we hear and we see all the time, that I think giving the trainees the skill set, the communication, and the onlookers skill set and things that are needed for them when they're dealing with people, with individuals that are coming to them that have issues around substance. I think that there needs to be another space for conversation. And I've spoke with the team about this because I think it's important for us to have these conversations.
One of the things that's important for this process also is to have those folks in community that are like strategic planners. One of the things I've learned from this process, I'm a outcome-based strategic planner. I could work with anybody. And it's not specific to me. There are others like me in community. I understand the rigors of science, but I'm also connected in community. I know how to build that bridge. I'm the true sense of what Loretta talking about in terms of grassroots experts. I'm a real, for my populations, there's not much you can teach me about the population that I serve. I know how to build that bridge to make those connect. I'm also a connector. I've been around long enough to be a connector. So you want to find other folks like me for my that have expertise in the various populations. There are folks like me that have expertise with youth and the transition age youth, with women, so you need to identify those folks because they're the real ones they're the ones you want to work with to really be able to build the bridge and to create this model that's really important for you to do effective work, and you have the kind of recognition that you need to get things done. But you got to have, and as a rule, when you're doing any kind of planning, you have to look at the past, the present, and the future before you move. So your discussions should consider the past, the present, and the future before you move. That's important for the students that you're serving. How you look at the past to see what worked, what didn't work. Where are you now? Looking at the student themselves and how they see their careers, how they want to move forth, and how do you shape what they look like in the future. So you got to have a past. You have to talk about the past, the present, and the future before you move.
And
I
it's
like
like,
that, Ted. I
that's
like
it.
that.
And then
You're
when you
absolutely
also,
right.
that's it. But you also have to look at because me being bringing the voice of the children and the families, when you look at the trauma, because right now, the ACEs, when you're looking at adverse child experiences, and you having whole schools where it's like 60%, 70% of students are in out-of-home placement. You look at the foster care system, and I'm going into the homes across all these counties, tutoring children. And I'm having, because if I'm working in the jailhouse, correctional aid for children, if I'm in special ed, the pregnant minded for correction, and in the house from Head Start, I hear things, I see things. I'm in the trenches there. There are people like me that we have to come out of the classroom setting sometimes to impact policy and systems. I had to come out because it's all the trauma. And there are others like me, but in the trenches, it's just so much that had to be done. But I realized that I had to come out in order for me to impact systems and policy changes around this population. Because right now, when we talk about COVID, now we have locked the children in the homes with the predators, and a system that was put in place to keep them safe has the most harm that happens. I don't really hear any good stories from my children, that are in foster care, and right now, bringing the teams to do the mentoring programs at the high schools because these children need us and things. We started with Locke, with Princess Queen and See a Man, Be a Man. Asking a young lady the other day, do you have any mentors or role models that are female that you look to? And to hear her say, no, I don't have any, no one, no female role models that I can look to. And you're talking about substance abuse, because the children are saying, like the one young man where the father had been incarcerated and locking him into spaces because he had been in solitary confinement. So he had been doing this to his child and stuff because he experienced it. He now transferred this behavior onto his child and had been giving him heavy drugs since the age of 8. And then the child is expected. The child is saying, I feel like I'm being punished everywhere because then when I go to school, you expect me to perform. And then I'm punished there. From there, I'm going into correctional ed because, whatever your standards are here, And so we have so many children like this. And now these are generations where we're expecting them to be leaders and stuff. When you got whole schools where 60, 70% of those students, and it's all around Drew, are in out-of-home placement, how are we expecting them to rise to the occasion to be productive adults? in society. You know, so when you talk about substance abuse, we're going to have so much to deal with when this COVID is over.
We have a model from this process also. I created a personal development model and life skills development model that I call In Search of Me. And at Amad, we use that model to support the therapy. It allows some conversation to happen with participants to set them up so they can, with the therapist around, you know, after the fact, that they can go, they know they can identify problem areas that's unresolved. So when it's time for them to go and see their therapist, they're able to address the issues that need to get addressed. And the whole idea is to help them be able to come up with that clear, that free and clear thinking again. So it's really important when you look at those kinds of cases. That's why mental health is so whole person care, and being client-centered means something. Because I mean, you deal with everything on a case-by-case basis. You can't use a cookie-cutter approach like Dr. Robeson was saying earlier to deal with a particular, with any population that you're serving. It really has to be client-centered, and everything has to be done on a case-by-case. We do everything on a case-by-case basis, and so that's the only way it's really going to be able to work. That's something that has to follow through across the board for all disciplines in terms of really trying to achieve positive outcomes with clients that you're serving.
And I wanted to say that with certain challenges such as mental health in the African American community, there are so many stigmas. I worked on a 5-year initiative for African American caregivers of loved ones with dementia. And we conducted this research in churches, and when they heard the word dementia, they felt like that meant you were crazy. So no one wanted to sign up for it. So we were doing like the assessment, and we were saying, well, is your parent losing their keys and doing this, that, and the other? They was like, oh yeah. But when you asked them, did they have dementia? They said no. So we had to change the whole title of our study during the second year to education sessions for loved ones with memory loss. Then more people started coming. So we had to address that before we can even give the education.
That's it. Mm-hmm. And that's so important. And that's why I asked Dr. Robeson to come to the table, because the communities in which she served mirror the same impact of the communities that we serve. And many of my team members, because we all with the community-based caucus arm of the American Public Health, and those in Michigan and, North Carolina, all the different states, we all are in the same type of communities facing the same issues and stuff. So it gives us a chance to kind of talk on a national platform as to what's going on.
There are many jewels in community that get overlooked. And I think one of the biggest disservices that happen to Black community is Black folks have always had to deal with limited resources. Yeah. So when it comes to difficult subject matter situations, we're the last one that anybody wants to talk to, when we're the one that everybody should be talking to. When you look at our experience and how we've been able to overcome based on our circumstance, nobody values us like they should. If you really want to solve a problem, come to our community. And like I said earlier, for us, it's our women that really move our culture more than you don't have a valid project if you don't have a Black woman in that's part of what you're doing in Black culture. I'll be very clear about that.
This is Plus, a program that I designed back in early 90s, I think. I was teaching in Compton Unified and at a private school, and a program that I put together, Positive Living, Understanding Self, which was Plus. And the program was, now I can't even say it, but anyways, behavior modification program. And it was high school, junior high school and high school students. And I started with them learning about why they were angry, because the kids were so angry back then. And I would put the word man on the board. They told me dog, mean, whatever, all these negative. I put the woman on the board, beautiful, loving, nurturing, blah, blah, blah. Now I put the word marriage. And they said all the beautiful things. I said, well, if you have a dog and this, how do you get this? And they said, we don't know. And so I taught them, and there was Mexican, Black, Asian in the classroom. And so one of their assignments they had to do, like when Easter break, Christmas break, whatever, their homework was to, and I taught it twice a week for an hour and a half in the schools, and they had to come back and tell me what their family did for the break, for the you know, as far as their Easter break and whatever. And they were like amazed to find out that the different cultures did almost the same thing. And they said, oh, we did that at our house. Oh, but they did it a different way, but it was the same thing. And so what I was trying to teach them, I said, all this stuff that you're hating on this one, that's something someone taught you. Hatred is taught and it's learned. And so if it's a learned behavior, then you could unlearn it. And so that's what I did, was teaching them the different communication styles and to respect one another. And I said, if this student up here is getting A's and you're getting D's, you need to get to know this student up here and say, you know what, can you show me how to do that problem or whatever? But I taught them the respect. And at the end of the semester, I always had the principal and the vice principals and whatever come into class. And the students decided, they chose who was going to speak and tell them what they learned in the class. And this one school, I think it was Davis Junior High School in Compton, middle school, this 15-year-old boy, when the vice principal came and said, oh, there you, I said, excuse me. I said, we don't yell out in the classroom. And she said, I'm so sorry. But I was teaching them that the respect they had for others, that the adults had the same respect. And she said, can I speak? I said, yeah. She said, where have you been? I haven't seen you. And he said, I've been coming to Miss Williams' class. He had stopped. What happened was he was always in the office because he always ditched the classes or with disruption, and he'd go and hide and whatever. And so he said, I said, what? He said, can I tell her what I learned? I said, yeah. I was just so shocked because he told her two of them, I learned how to respect authority. He didn't respect his parents. He didn't respect no kind of authority. And he said, I learned why I need to respect them. And so little things like that, you know, we're dealing with adults, whatever, but we got to start with those kids. Like Juanita said, those kids are traumatized, and especially now, they're really traumatized and they don't understand what's going on. And if we don't get to them, and we had a trauma conference in February with Lundquist, which used to be LA Biomed, but we did a trauma. They wanted to do it with the kids. I said, we have to talk to the parents first because the parents don't even know they're living in trauma. And so we found out that we did different groups. We had a Spanish group, we had a Native Pacific Islander group, and those people would never speak in public, but they spoke in their own particular group. And the things that came out, they didn't know that the environment they were living in, the things they were subjected to, that it was traumatizing to them. And so when they all came back, it was like Dr. Proto Stick was our keynote speaker. Dr. Sheila Young came to the program. She didn't stay all, but she went to one of the programs, one of the sessions. But I'm saying all that to say, we don't know, something that traumatizes me might not traumatize you, but the kids are watching their parents, and now it's single parents, and they're products of drug addict parents, and we're talking about substance abuse. And so we have to deal with that. I have 3 nephews that were born drug addicted. They're now grown, but they're math whizzes. But bottom line is, they didn't know what was going with them. So their grandmother, the grandmother on the father's side, had a neurologist, had a psychiatrist, had this, that, and whatever as they were growing up. So they could, and they used to have seizures. They don't have seizures anymore. So I'm saying all that to say, we have to look at what does substance abuse do? And then back in the day when substance came out, I'm saying when it came out, was back in the 80s. In the 80s, Dr. Charlie Knight used to be superintendent at Linwood Unified. She had a meeting with the whole school district. And she said, you know what? Drugs is coming out now, and they do not know how weed is affecting the parents, how crack is, all that. And so they've been doing studies, but they still haven't finalized it. They know what they think or whatever, but every human being is affecting them differently. And then they're having children. And so nobody's following the children, they just following the adults. No, it affected the children. And so they're mixing drugs. You know, they're not just weed smokers, they're crack smokers, they're heroin addicts, or whatever. They're mixing the drugs. So that's even harder to study. And so
let's give people time for a break now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Very interesting. Yeah, we can, we'll start back in about 10 minutes, but we do want to keep someone on schedule and want people to get time for a little bathroom break. Thank you very much for everybody's comments and great presentations this morning. Christina, you want to announce anything else?
No, thank you all very much for all your feedback and just kind of showing how important it is to keep these topics, I think, afloat and continuing to kind of remind ourselves why it's so important to bring into the community and to tie the research in and to find ways that we can kind of help everybody. And I really liked what Mr. Booker said about the whole person care. I think just tying it all back and seeing how we can help people as a whole person by helping communities. So thank you all so much for your valuable commentary.
Thank you. Can we put the agenda back up?
Sure. So we
Thank
have,
you, guys.
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you, guys. I gotta go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Okay, so we've got,
Can you enlarge it a little?
so we've got a break that will
Thank
take until about 11. And then at 11, we'll start with Dr. Lee, or maybe 11:05. If Dr. Friedman, you think we should give folks a longer break?
Yeah, let's give it like 11:05.
Okay, that sounds good. So we'll do the break till 11:05 and then go from there.
See you soon.